Michael, about your journey in creating this film on our beloved Ben. What was that process like?
First, thank you for moderating.
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, the 44th Annual Newark Black Film Festival. Thank you for having us once again. So we really appreciate it. So that's the house. Take care of the house. Ben and I, he's funny. Ben and I go back a long time, actually before I was born. My father and his older brothers, Ornsby and Pluggy, were friends. And I never knew that part of the journey. I always heard my father talk about these guys, but I never knew Ben was one of their younger brothers. I went to Arts High School, and Louis Spindler was a dynamic director of the art department. He would have Ben come over to speak to the students at the Arts High School of Performing Arts, and Ben would come. And quite a few of us, from Jose Cruz to others, myself, Dwayne, we followed behind Ben. I was already an artist, so I had to leave Ben and start changing my major to biology. And I pursued that kind of career. What inspired me most to do this particular documentary on Ben Jones was watching, even today, a 76, 77-year-old gentleman who does artwork that is pertinent to what's happening in society. If you saw the opening piece and the closing piece, it's the same piece, the Trayvon Martin piece. And in my mind, I'm trying to figure out what can inspire me or this gentleman to focus on stuff that's affecting us today. So I asked him, I said, hey, what were your inspirations behind your art? Because he could do all these nice pieces that commercially people like to look at, but his has story and meaning. And he said, well, my inspirations was Malcolm, Martin, Robert Kennedy, and those people from the Civil Rights era. When I saw what was happening in the Civil Rights era and seeing what's happening now, I'm still watching the same people of color killed by law enforcement. And so even with the edits that you saw in there, and I don't make any apology when you heard the gun shots, and I heard in the background, ooh, because as a man of color, I lived those experiences every single day. And when it came to editing, and then me looking back at his journey, and him allowing us in his life, myself, Dwayne Richardson, Jose, LaDonna, different ones into his life that followed him for 8 years around the world, not just the country, around the world. I was intrigued to tell that story. I was just down in Atlanta with Bill Duke, and he's working on a movie down there, and we had dinner, and we were talking about the responsibility of filmmakers. And so I have other films out, but this particular documentary, I want to put the image out there that I want to see reflected in society. And it's important that we tell stories of Ben Jones and others who are making a true impact into us. So, that's...
I just want to say one more thing to Michael before I go to Ben, because once we get Ben started,
Uh-oh.
we got to go. But I thought the film was beautifully edited, and I thought talk about those two?
Yes, we were blessed to have a team of people. You know, like when the stuff goes well, you know, Mike Barbie's the name, but when it goes bad, Mike Barbie's the name. But we were blessed to have a mentor in the arts, Sam Pollard, who is your colleague over at NYU. And Sam gave us the skeleton for the documentary. And we were able to put things together. The music, we have people like Josh Milan. We have live music from Randy Weston. We have Duad Williams and his team. And Ben started selecting different musicians that he wanted featured. And so part of it, in telling the story, I'm always thinking about Miles Davis when he says,
Miles Davis.
Oh, wow. When Miles Davis speaks about music, and he says sometimes silence is part of the sound. And so when, as a filmmaker, I learned to close my eyes and be able to see a film with my eyes closed. because I have to be able to hear it and feel it. And so when you hear the music, the African beats, or either the modern day or the jazz, you know, part of it is just the whole orchestra coming together. So Sam Pollitt, to me, I would give credit to when it comes to just giving us the skeleton. And then the team together, we pulled it together.
And you and I have talked about something that Mary Baraka used to say, and that is artists have a job to do to raise the consciousness of the people. Now, given that and your activism, go forth and tell us how your band activist, socialist, how that expound beyond the movie, how that influences your art.
Things evolve from being on a journey. As at the age of 77 now, is that
Nobody believes you're 77.
get up in the morning, I go. So anyway, life is so complicated. Life is so complicated, and the older I get, when I was young, I was so convinced of the way I thought it. I thought that was right, and this is right, and this is right that I think, and this is the way everybody needs to think, and stuff like that. The older I get, it's like a friend of mine said to me yesterday morning about talking about their children, and he's somebody who tries to get involved with all his children's problems and with their marriages and all that. He said to me yesterday, he said, I'm learning to let them live their life. And that's not an easy thing to do because that's your child. But you have to let things evolve the way they are. So we have all different kinds of perspectives, all different kinds of people, all different kinds of needs. So what we have to try to do is understand those things. We don't have to agree with them, but we have to understand those things. Because otherwise, you just stay in your own little bubble and you don't move things along. That's why I'm saying that on your job, in your family, in the street, you have to be talking to people, and you have to get out. You know, my mother, she was a domestic, and she worked for this Jewish family, and every day she'd come home, she's kissing this one and kissing that one. So I said to myself, and I must have been about 7 or 8 years of age, I said, why is she always kissing everybody all the time? She gets kisses, and she was always giving out this warm energy. And I find myself, I don't know if you noticed me today, I'm going around kissing this one, this, that. And what I realized is that this is something that she put in me, that's in me whether I like it or not. It's like when I got my first apartment, when moved from home, I was so glad to move and everything. So my mother was a cleaning fanatic. So when I moved, everything was like you were in a garbage house or something. I throw things, everything. But as I got older, the cleaning. Now I'm a cleaning fanatic. So the thing is, things change and things evolve and things are complicated. So the best we can do is try to throw out good energy to people. You know, throw out good energy to people.
When did you know it was the right time for you to make that switch from what you thought you were going to do to what you wanted to do?
Well, thank you for the question. I was always awoke, and I knew who I was as an artist. I went to school for performing arts. I was challenged to be who I was and expound upon it, so I never left that. Me going into another direction was because another mentor, Dr. William Howard Griffith, was an inspiration to me to want to be a doctor one day, so I had those visions as well. I knew I was an artist, so I didn't want to be a broke artist because I see so many broke artists. And I know, and my father used to encourage me to get a job. And so with that being said, I kept my art alive while I worked. And so instead of just working, I'm glad you cut the bio down. I built businesses, and so my success has been in business. And so when I reached a certain plateau, I've been able to step back and go back to expounding on my art. So instead of me painting or drawing or doing photography, I started telling stories through my books and then taking the books to movies. And so I just always live, even now I'm living in the art, man. You know, I may dress like this right now, but you know, I'm like this, you know, and on the inside, on the outside.
There's no other art side graduates in here, are there? No.
Thank you. For me, for me, this is the next elevation or the next chapter in my life. I was always a storyteller, but I didn't know I was. I became a minister at the age of 10, and people always had a comfort of talking to me or me talking with them or talking to them. And I mentioned that because I didn't know at 10, when I became a minister, that this was going to be the evolution. And everything from that, from doing marketing, I was an artist, but I was always in finance and marketing. I wanted to be behind the scenes. I was never the lead in any of the performances of the other artists that I went to school with. So when it came to going and furthering my education, I knew that I wanted to be the one behind the scenes. I always wanted to be in production. I always wanted to make the vision happen, tell the story from the other side. So marketing and going into retail with my husband and becoming a mother and all of those things was just, you know, the things that allowed me to live and be an artist. And then when I started doing community, yes, husband, y'all can hashtag that. But when I got into the community activism part, I realized that in the short term that I was at the Mary Center, all these people came and volunteered and worked with me. And I realized then it wasn't about a product I sold, it wasn't about a store I owned, it wasn't about a photograph I took. People felt connected and comfortable with me. And then when that part of the activism work, when it was realized, then I realized the best way for me to be an activist was to tell the story behind the camera. And so that was just I didn't know. I swear I did not know. And then it was just a few years later when everything started coming together and I started getting people asking me to do more things. Then it just evolved into what's coming now. And now my children are getting older, everyone's leaving the house. So I feel like God is showing me, okay, well, learn the next part of your life, your story, because it's my story too. You know, I'm the artist Untitled Journey, because I'm still on it. So it was a part of, I guess, the next phase that God allowed me to see, to be this griot of the 2018 of the new world, telling our stories that aren't told. Because I was called Motor Mouth as a kid. Like I always was talking.
And I hope this gives you something. Just know you're on a journey. And it doesn't matter how you start. You're on a journey, so let the journey let you evolve. And because so often, Carl, she's going to kill me for saying this. I've always was one of these academics who was against that the qualification to be good was just academic. It's not. It's not. So you have to follow that journey and be the best you can be. Be the best, and that's it. You know, and no one can answer what your journey is going to be. You have to follow. You know, because a lot of times people want you to tell them what to be. That's the easy way out. You know, I don't know if you know, do you know a poet by the name of Jane Cortez? Yeah. Okay, one of the things I do with young people, I constantly, Carlos, I go into the gym and every morning I'm still doing professor in the gym. And because I'll ask them, let's say I ask a young person, who's Nina Simone, and they can't tell me. I said, you know that thing that you all are looking at 24 hours a day? I said, take it out and look up her name. Okay, so what I'm saying to you is, whenever you hear a name you don't know, it's your responsibility to investigate. Because you all have that most powerful tool today. And use it more for than just titillation. Okay? And it will give you the answers.
Thank you.
There's always that question that's being asked how those connections are made. But when you really think about it, sometimes for the artist, we're not aware of our awake, we're just in it.
Right.
So what we become aware of is you making us see ourselves in that mirror of truth turning on us. Because a lot of that is we just feel and go with what we feel. And just like when you put color on a page or you put texture on a page, you're activating your awake. And so I'm awake. That's the only difference, is that some of us act on our awake and some of us sleepwalk.
I wanted to say before I forget that your works are extraordinary.
How many years or how long you guys take to do those documentaries?
Well, it didn't take 8 years for us. But you can tell the difference in an 8-year production and 2 years. And you can tell the difference between someone who's been doing this a lot longer versus someone who this is their first film. So for me, the production was difficult because it was my first entry into filmmaking, and we wanted to tell the story, and we fought because we were asked to tell the story of Unveil Unlock. But everyone who's in Unveil Unlock is in Unveil Unlock because of Alethea Brown. So I wanted to tell the story of Alethea Brown. So the movie directed itself, which is still not finished. Because in me telling the story of Alethea, then it went into Unveil Unlock, not on purpose. I was mad. I was like, I don't want to tell that story. But it was a part of her journey, and it made sense to incorporate that in. But because it's still unfolding, that's why it was good for us to come in the world as a 27 short to kind of be like, okay, well, what's next? And how do we learn what to put next to make into a full feature movie? So the collaboration came just from, I guess, our, symbiotic relationship of just kind of feeling each other and knowing that ultimately we were telling the same story, but it didn't start out that way. It just evolves. Because again, I believe that we're just tools. Everything is already divine. You know what I'm saying? So we're just playing these parts of a message that is already, lined up.
Well, I like the way that you say that everything is destined in so many ways. When it comes to the project I did with Ben, it could have been done in 2 years, 1 year, a few months, but the reality...
Like, that was some great footage.
Thank
That
you.
travel really we felt the dancing,
Thank you.
the pictures from before.
you. But let me just say, from the director's perspective, and looking at Ben's life, we did clash. Anyone who works close with Ben, you will clash. And it's a healthy clashing because me as an artist have a vision. And Ben as an artist, and especially when you're doing a documentary, not like I do feature films and it's my vision. But in this case, it's his life exactly. And so telling that, so we had some areas of clashing. One of the things, he wanted a very short one. I'm like, Pop, he's my godfather. I said, Pop, how can we tell your story in a half hour? And he was just determined, but he was looking at, I don't want all that attention. I said, but we have to tell it. So when you look at what gets left on the chopping block, most of it gets left on the chopping block. So you have to choose what are the essential ingredients. And one of the things that I kept learning from watching documentaries and watching storytellers and watching and listening to Sam Pollard or Bill Duke and being fortunate to know these people, I'm able to tell a story and have a thread. And as long as I have that thread, I can weave the story from the infancy to its maturity. So that's how I was able to put this together. And then I have a team. And I'm not going to belong the hour or belabor the hour. But I have a group outside of my professional team here, Beth, LaDonna, and others. But I have a team called Arts High School, and I have to really say something about that. I graduated in 1984. I have friends from Arts High School graduated before me who still support me. And it's something about a community when you have only 160 people in your graduating class, and the quality of education that you get. It is so valuable, and I just can't escape those relationships. So when you hear a shout out, Arts High, it's because it's an establishment. And we take pride with the education that we establish. And I take all of that with me. So on one of my other movies, Beyond the Silence, I think there's around 40 Arts High people working on that production. And it was important that I bring artists in to help with the story.
I'm
Wait, did you point at me when you said Arts High? I didn't.
Oh, no,
everybody thinks I did, but I didn't.
He's from Newark, and I thought you were from Orange.
I know. Everybody. Well, my son graduated. Jamil Mankey, he graduated from Arts High in 1984. Right. Something right. Is that another Arts High? Ronell Beg out there? Okay.